At the edge of the desert, a lone man stood holding a stolen horse by its reins, waiting for people who were supposed to kill him. The sun bled into the horizon as hoofbeats approached. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He had made a choice, and now he would face whatever came with it. Elias Mercer had never planned to be brave. He was a quiet ranch hand, the kind of man who kept his head down and his conscience louder than his voice. When he discovered the horse, tied behind a trading post, branded with an Apache mark, he knew immediately it wasn't meant to be there. Someone had stolen it, and in this land, stealing from the Apaches was a death wish. The horse was strong, restless, its dark eyes sharp with fear. Elias felt something twist in his chest. He could have walked away. Most men would have. But his father's voice echoed in his memory, low and steady. If you benefit from a wrong you didn't commit, you're still part of it. All night, Elias wrestled with the decision. The desert wind howled outside his small cabin, carrying stories of bloodshed and revenge. By dawn, his choice was made. He saddled the horse, packed water and bread, and rode toward Apache territory alone. Fear rode with him every mile. Not just fear of death, but fear that kindness had no place left in a broken world. Still, he pressed on, because returning the horse felt like the only way he could live with himself. The Apache camp emerged slowly from the heat haze, tents low and still, smoke curling upward like quiet warning. Elias dismounted before reaching the boundary, raising his empty hands. His heart pounded so hard it drowned out the desert silence. Warriors appeared from nowhere, rifles steady, faces unreadable. One spoke sharply in a language Elias didn't understand. He swallowed and gestured toward the horse, pushing it forward gently. "It was stolen," he said, voice hoarse. "I brought it back." The horse nickered softly, stepping toward its people. A murmur rippled through the camp. An older man approached, weathered, eyes deep with years of loss. He examined the brand, then the horse, then Elias. "You return what was not yours," the elder said slowly. "Why?" Elias hesitated. Truth felt dangerous, but lies felt worse, because it was wrong to keep it. The elder studied him for a long moment. "Many men know what is wrong," he said. "Few act." Elias was given water, food, not freedom. He waited all day under the sun, unsure if kindness had saved him or merely delayed judgment. As the sun climbed higher, Elias noticed the camp's quiet sorrow. Women moved carefully, eyes heavy. Children played, but their laughter felt restrained, as if joy itself was being rationed. Something was missing here, someone. That evening, the elder returned and sat across from him. "The horse belonged to my son," he said. "He was taken 3 days ago. Beaten, tied, dragged behind traders who wanted gold more than mercy." Elias felt the words land like stones. He hadn't just returned a horse. He had stepped into a wound still bleeding. "I'm sorry," Elias said, the words feeling useless. The elder nodded. "Sorry does not bring him back, but your choice that matters." At sunset, the camp stirred. Warriors mounted their horses, faces grim. Elias watched, confused, until dust appeared on the horizon. 2 riders approached slowly. Between them, tied across a saddle, was a man, bloodied, barely conscious, alive. The horse beneath him was the one Elias had returned. The elder stood. "You gave back what was stolen," he said. "Now we return what was taken." Elias's knees nearly gave way. They lowered the broken man gently onto the ground. His breathing was shallow, his body marked by cruelty Elias could barely look at. The elder knelt beside him, touching his son's face with trembling hands. Elias felt tears burn his eyes, not from fear now, but from shame. For every time he had looked away, for every silence that had allowed this world to become what it was, the elder turned to him. "You risked your life for a horse," he said. "Why?" Elias struggled for words. "Because someone loved it," he finally said. "Because someone would be hurting without it." The elder's eyes softened. Yes, he whispered. That is why. That night, Elias was invited to stay, not as a prisoner, as a guest. He shared food with people he had once been taught to fear. He listened to grief spoken softly around the fire. Kindness, he realized, did not erase pain, but it changed what pain became. Before dawn, Elias prepared to leave. The elder walked him to the edge of the camp. Behind him, the wounded man slept, alive because one stranger had chosen to do what was right instead of what was easy. You returned honor, the elder said, so we return trust. He pressed something into Elias's hand, a small carved token. So you remember, he added. Elias rode away as the sun rose, the desert no longer feeling empty. He carried fear still, and sorrow, but also something new. Quiet certainty that even in violent times, compassion could interrupt the cycle. He understood now. Kindness is not weakness. It is a risk, a dangerous, powerful one. And sometimes, when offered sincerely, it comes back at sunset, bringing life where death was expected. Elias rode for hours after leaving the camp, but the desert no longer felt the same. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of voices, memories, and the weight of what he had witnessed. Every time the wind brushed past him, he thought of the elder's eyes, heavy with grief, yet steady with honor. He touched the carved token in his pocket, grounding himself whenever doubt crept in at by midday. He reached a small settlement near the river. The usual chatter fell quiet when people noticed him. News traveled fast in places like this. Someone whispered, "That's the man who walked into Apache land alone." Others stared with suspicion, unsure whether to admire him or fear the consequences he might bring. Elias dismounted slowly, aware of the tension. A shopkeeper finally spoke. "You're lucky to be alive." Elias nodded. Luck had little to do with it. That night, sleep refused to come. Images returned again and again. The wounded man tied across the saddle, the elder's trembling hands, the way kindness had shifted the air itself. Elias realized something unsettling. Returning the horse had not been the end of his responsibility. It was the beginning. He wondered how many wrongs stayed wrong simply because no one dared to make them right, and whether the desert, vast and unforgiving, had just taught him the most human lesson of his life. Days later, Elias was summoned to the sheriff's office. The room smelled of dust and old paper, the law sitting heavy behind a wooden desk. The sheriff didn't offer a chair. "You interfered with a trade," he said flatly. "Cost some men a lot of money." Elias met his gaze. "They stole that horse." The sheriff scoffed. "That's not how the world works out here." Elias felt anger rise, but he kept his voice steady. "Maybe that's the problem." The sheriff leaned forward. "You think you're a hero now? Returning stolen property doesn't change what this land is." "No," Elias said quietly, "but it changed who I am." He was dismissed with a warning. As he stepped outside, he realized something frightening and freeing at once. Once you act on your conscience, you can't silence it again. That evening, a stranger approached him by the fire. "My brother was taken once," the man said softly. "No one helped. I heard what you did." Elias didn't know how to respond. The stranger continued, "You reminded people that choices still exist." For the first time since the desert, Elias understood the ripple effect of a single act. Kindness, once released, refused to stay contained. Weeks passed. Elias returned to ranch work, but his hands felt different on the reins now. Every horse had a story. Every brand meant someone belonged to someone else. He found himself intervening more, quietly correcting wrongs, speaking when silence would have been easier. One afternoon, a small Apache boy appeared near the fence line. He stood still, watching Elias work. Elias approached slowly, offering water. The boy accepted it with cautious hands. "My grandfather sent this," the boy said, holding out a bundle. Inside was dried meat and another carving, this one shaped like a circle. He says the circle means what you give returns, the boy added. Elias swallowed hard. Tell him I remember. As the boy disappeared into the desert, Elias felt the weight of the world shift again. Not heavier, but clearer. The story hadn't ended with the sunset that day. It was still moving, still teaching. That night, Elias wrote a letter to no one in particular, just words he needed to release. He wrote about fear, about regret, about how compassion felt like standing unarmed in front of danger and choosing not to turn away. Winter came early that year. With it came hardship, short supplies, harsher tempers, old prejudices resurfacing under stress. Rumors spread of conflict brewing again between settlers and the Apaches. Fear tightened its grip on the land. Elias felt torn. He had tasted what understanding looked like. Now he watched it slip away. When violence finally erupted, shots fired near the river, Elias rode toward it without thinking. He arrived to chaos. Shouting men, raised weapons, fear blinding everyone involved. He stepped between them. Stop, he shouted, heart pounding. This doesn't end how you think it will. Someone recognized him. Murmurs spread. The tension wavered, fragile as glass. An Apache warrior stepped forward. It was the elder son, scarred, walking with pain, but standing. He returned my life, the man said, voice steady. We will not take another. Silence fell. In that moment, Elias understood the cost of compassion. It demanded courage again and again, but it also offered something rare, an exit from endless bloodshed. The standoff dissolved slowly, like frost under morning sun. Weapons lowered. Men stepped back. No cheers followed, only relief, quiet and heavy. Later, Elias sat alone by the river, hands shaking now that the danger had passed. He realized how close he had come to death, not once, but many times since returning that horse. And yet, he didn't regret a single step. The elder son approached, sitting beside him. My father says some men are bridges, he said. They are walked on, but they connect what would never meet. Elias stared at the water. Bridges don't last forever. No, the man agreed, but while they stand, lives cross safely. As dusk settled, Elias felt a familiar ache of fear, but also something stronger. Purpose. He had learned that compassion does not promise safety. It promises meaning. And sometimes, meaning is enough to change the course of many lives. Not loudly, not quickly, but permanently. Word spread slowly, but it spread. Not as legend, nothing so grand, but as something more dangerous. Example. People began to speak Elias's name in lowered voices, not because he was feared, but because he unsettled them. He had done what many knew was right and most refused to attempt. The sheriff avoided him now. Traders watched him carefully. And yet, when small injustices surfaced, a withheld payment, a mistreated animal, a whispered threat, someone always glanced toward Elias, wondering what he might do. He felt the pressure build. Being a bridge meant weight from both sides. One evening, he found his stable vandalized. Nothing stolen. Just a message carved into the wood. You don't belong anywhere. Elias traced the letters with shaking fingers. For the first time, doubt pierced him deeply. He had wanted to do one good thing. He hadn't meant to become a symbol. That night, he dreamed of the desert again. The sunset, the hoofbeats, the wounded man across the saddle. In the dream, the man spoke without opening his mouth. Doing right doesn't end danger. It only changes what danger means. Elias woke before dawn, exhausted but resolved. If this was the price of conscience, he would pay it. Quietly, completely, winter tightened its grip. Food grew scarce. Fear made people selfish. A settler's child went missing near the borderlands, and suspicion fell fast, too fast. Apaches took him. Someone shouted. Elias felt the lie land like a blow. He had seen enough grief to recognize the shape of it. He mounted his horse before the mob could gather momentum. He found the child by the river hours later, cold, frightened, tangled in reeds. No violence, Just accident and fear. As Elias wrapped the boy in his coat, he felt anger, not at the people, but at the ease with which blame replaced truth. When he returned the child unharmed, relief swept the town. But embarrassment followed. No one apologized. They rarely do. That night, Elias rode to the edge of Apache land, lit a small fire, and waited. The elder came alone. "You carry many burdens not meant for one man," the elder said. Elias stared into the flames. "If I don't carry them, who will?" The elder placed a hand over the firelight. "Even bridges need rest, or they collapse." The words stayed with Elias long after the fire died. Spring arrived, but Elias felt older than the seasons. His body ached, his spirit more so. Compassion had opened his eyes, but it had not closed the wounds of the world. Sometimes, he wondered if kindness simply taught pain where to aim. Then tragedy struck quietly. A traitor Elias had once argued with was found dead along the pass. No witnesses, no proof, but suspicion pointed, inevitably, toward Apache territory. Elias rode out before rumors could harden into rage. He found the elder's son waiting. "We did not do this," the man said simply. Elias believed him. Together they searched. Hours later, they found tracks, boot prints, not moccasins. A robbery gone wrong. A lie already beginning to rot. Elias brought the truth back alone. The town didn't thank him. Truth rarely receives applause. But violence was averted. Again that night, Elias sat alone, staring at the stars. He realized then that second chances were not single moments. They were ongoing decisions, fragile, exhausting, endlessly tested, and still worth choosing. The elder fell ill that summer. When word reached Elias, he rode through the night. The camp welcomed him without question now. The old man's breath was shallow, his once strong hands thin. "You crossed many times," the elder whispered. "That is rare." Elias knelt beside him. "You taught me how." The elder shook his head weakly. "No, you already knew. You just listened." Before dawn, the elder passed. Grief moved through the camp like wind through tall grass, quiet, collective, deep. Elias stood with them, mourning a man who had changed his life without ever demanding it. As the sun rose, the elder's son placed the circle carving back into Elias's hand. "My father said this belongs to you now," he said, "because you keep the circle unbroken." Elias felt tears fall freely. Loss, he understood, was not the opposite of love. It was proof of it. When Elias returned home, the world looked familiar and utterly changed. He had not gained wealth, or safety, or peace in the way people usually meant it, but he had gained clarity. He repaired fences. He fed horses. He spoke when silence would have been easier. And when fear came, as it always did, he remembered the sunset, the saddle, the choice. He was still afraid, but fear no longer decided for him. Elias understood now. Compassion doesn't promise survival. It promises significance. It turns ordinary people into moments others will remember when darkness presses close. He was not a hero. He was a man who returned a stolen horse. And in doing so, he learned that second chances are rarely loud miracles. They are quiet decisions, made again and again by those willing to stand still at sunset and wait for what comes next. The years passed quietly, as meaningful years often do. Elias grew older, his hair touched with gray, his movements slower but steadier. The land around him still carried scars, but fewer than before. Not because the world had become kinder, because people had seen what kindness looked like when lived, not preached. Children grew up hearing stories of a man who once returned a stolen horse and somehow changed the way violence paused before acting. Elias never corrected the stories, never encouraged them either. He understood that truth didn't need embellishment to endure. One evening, as the sun lowered itself into familiar colors, Elias found himself standing at the same edge of the desert where everything had begun. The silence felt different now. Not empty, complete. He realized then that his life hadn't been defined by comfort or success, but by moments where he chose connection over fear. The world had not been saved, but it had been softened, and sometimes that is enough. A traveler arrived one afternoon, injured and desperate. Elias offered water without question, shelter without hesitation. As he cleaned the man's wounds, the traveler asked, "Why are you like this?" Elias smiled faintly, "Because someone once trusted me with their grief." The traveler stayed the night. By morning, he left changed, not healed entirely, but steadier. Elias watched him ride away, recognizing the pattern. This was how it worked. Not grand gestures, not dramatic endings. Just one human steadying another long enough for them to continue. Elias thought of the elder, of the son who survived, of the circle carving worn smooth in his pocket. He thought of how violence had once expected him, and how compassion had surprised it instead. That night, Elias slept peacefully, knowing his life had become a place others passed through safely, even briefly. As age weighed heavier on his body, Elias began teaching children how to care for horses, not just how to ride, but how to listen. "Animals," he told them, "teach you who you are when no one is watching." The children listened, some more than others, but one boy lingered often, asking quiet questions. "Were you scared?" the boy asked once. "Yes," Elias answered honestly. "Why did you do it then?" Elias looked toward the horizon. "Because fear doesn't disappear when you run. It only grows." The boy nodded slowly, absorbing a lesson meant for a lifetime. Elias realized then that his legacy would not be stories told about him, but decisions others made because of him. And that was more than he had ever hoped for. One final winter came gently. Elias felt it in his bones before the snow arrived. He spent more time sitting, watching sunsets stretch across the land like familiar prayers. When he could no longer ride, he wasn't angry. He had traveled far enough. The Apache elder's son, now an elder himself, visited him one last time. They sat in silence, the kind earned over years. "You kept the circle," the elder said. Elias closed his eyes. "We all did." That night, Elias slept with the carving in his hand. He did not wake again, but the land did not feel emptier. It felt held. They buried Elias at sunset, just beyond the fence line, where the desert meets the grass. No speeches, no markers, just people standing quietly, remembering a man who chose to return what was never his to keep. In the days that followed, small acts appeared, unexplained kindness, patience where anger once lived, pauses where violence had rushed. The circle continued, because one man once believed that doing right, even alone, mattered, and it did. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting. It's returning what was taken and trusting compassion to answer. If this story touched your heart, like the video, subscribe, and join our Heart Angels family, where stories remind us that kindness still has a place in this world.